Hi everyone. I'm presenting our research paper, Governance, Accountability and Reporting Practices of Non-Profit Organizations, a study of CLBG Foundation in Malaysia at the 6th ASNAT International Multidisciplinary Academic Conference 2023 IMAC. These are the team members, the corresponding author, Associate Professor Dr. Noziana Lokman, the main author, Ms. Nur Aida Mohd Kamal, and me, Dr. Sarina Othman, as the co-author. All of us are attached with the Faculty of Administrative Science and Policy Studies, and Associate Professor Dr. Noziana Lokman is also currently attached with the Accounting Research Institute, High COE of the UiTM. Allow me to start off with the backgrounds of the study, where we need to know what is NPO. As we all noted, NPO stands for the non-profit organization, where this NPO must have an effective governance since it is the fundamental components of the accountability to the stakeholders. And this NPO are actually founded by the various parties, entities such as the government, businesses, individuals, and various stakeholders, where the stakeholders come from various, having different interests. The stakeholders demands the NPO to be highly accountable and responsible. In terms of the accountability of the NPO, the donors believe the fund will be handled properly by the NPO, where the NPO should also report their actions honestly to show that they are dedicated enough to serve the stakeholders and also to serve the public interest at large. Moving on to the problem statements, what's currently happening in the NPO. Due to the organizational structure and characteristic of the NPO, there is little pressure for the NPO to act reasonably responsibility because the donor or the beneficiaries rarely ask question about how they spend the money, who is funding the organization, and what motives the organization to give the fund to the beneficiaries. The Malaysian NPO rules are still underdeveloped and occasionally unclear, involve conflicting parties to fight for their interests, and silent about the governance and the duties of the board of the NPO. The complexity of an NPO organization is the next issue, where we can see that there are ill-defined responsibilities among the governing officers, and the responsibility of the top management of the NPO. So hence that leads to the likelihood for fraud and poor management to happen in the NPO. Right. The aim of the study is actually for us to examine the level of the governance, accountability, and reporting practices among the NPO, particularly the foundations, which are founded as the Company Limited by Guarantee, CLBG Company, in response to the accountability gap between expectation and the practice of the three different elements, which are the governance, the accountability, and the reporting. We move on to the literature review. There are some important literature review that I have highlighted here. Besides being known as the third sector, NPOs are also referred to as the charitable sector, voluntary sector, or social sector. And in Malaysia, the Companies Commission of Malaysia and the Registry of Societies are the two main regulatory authorities that oversee the management and operation of the NPO. The NPO that generates more than 1 million in revenue can be registered as the Companies Limited by Guarantee under the SSM, while NPO with revenue less than 1 million, this organization can be registered under the ROS, where this ROS organization is subject to the Societies Act 1966. The Ministry of Domestic Trade, Cooperatives and Consumerism have authority over SSM, which is the regulator, and they are the primary government agencies in charge of monitoring and regulating NPO's operation in Malaysia. In Malaysia, the NPOs can be divided into 11 categories, namely politics, mutual benefit, fundamental rights, religion, specialty, welfare or charities, culture and arts, security, trade, recreational, and social. Moving on to the three different elements of the study, which are the reporting, accountability, and the governance of the MPO. MPO, which is registered under the SSM, where they are the company limited by guarantee, must ensure that their financial statements are audited and must comply with the requirements under the Malaysian Financial Reporting Standard issued by the Malaysian Accounting Standard Board. The MPOs registered under the ROS are governed under the Societies Act, and their financial statements are not required to be audited. However, they are encouraged to comply with the standards of the financial statements, and the financial statement needs to be audited voluntarily. In terms of the accountability of the MPO, due to the varied interaction between the MPO and the stakeholders, a typical structure of accountability established for MPO is known as the upward and downward accountability. It shows that the MPO will be responsible to society for the funds they receive from the public, from various entities just now, and the public fund, relies on public fund to provide the social services. In terms of the governance, this is actually in terms of the how and why organization or the MPO is governed by indicating the authority and accountability in managing the organization to ensure an appropriate decision-making process is there or is implemented for the benefits of the shareholders who have invested their money in the organization or that particular MPO. We move on to the methodology, where the study is focusing on the CLBG foundations, a foundation registered under the SSM, which is the regulator, and we have adopted the content analysis for us to generate the data to analyze further on the aims or to achieve the objective of the study. All of Malaysia CLBG foundation made up the sample size or the sample of the study. So this study adopted the secondary data that was found from the annual reports and the website of the foundations that were chosen. The content analysis methodology was employed to analyze the level of governance, accountability, and reporting of the foundations in Malaysia. And there are 36 foundations included in the study. Continue with the methodology. This is how we conduct the research and what we have done to generate the data or the findings. We have provided a set of checklists consisting of three main components, which are the governance, accountability, and the reporting, developed for the data collection based on prior studies like Dani, Connolly, and Roslan to suit the MPOs in Malaysia. All right, and in total there were 53 items developed, where it consists of governance item 19 altogether, accountability 17, and reporting 17 items. The data collection process started off by reviewing the annual reports and the websites of the CLBG selected. Right, and the quality of the disclosure was evaluated by identifying the items developed of the index using a score of 0 for non-disclosure and 1 for disclosure. And in terms of the interpretation of the findings, we scored the items based on this scale below 25%, which is considered as poor. Between 25% to 50% is considered as average score. More than 50%, between 75% is considered good, and the last one, if the score is greater than 75% but in between 100, is considered as excellent. So these are the list of the CLBG foundation that we have examined, and we found that these are the findings based on the analysis that we had carried out on these 36 MPOs. The first finding is that foundations of the study focuses more on the accountability practices, which constitute of 24.78% compared to reporting 11.25% and governance practices. And finding 2 shows that all foundations involved in the study are subsidiaries of listed companies, hence their activities support the parent company's social responsibility. Right? And then the third finding shows that the foundations in the study discharge their accountability to various stakeholders, especially the employees, community, and environmental matters. It was also discovered that the level of governance, accountability, and reporting practices of the MPOs in Malaysia is relatively still low based on the findings, and the disclosure level of financial and non-financial information among MPOs registered with ROS in Malaysia is also very low. And the last finding shows that most foundations in the study have failed to disclose detailed information concerning their governance and financial status on either the website or the annual report. So we have concluded that based on the findings, we found out that the level of governance, accountability, and reporting practices is relatively low, so the result indicates that the foundations practice minimum reporting requirement. Most foundations do not have a dedicated website, and if there is a website, the information provided is quite limited. Most of the foundation do not publish a separate annual report from the parent company, which may cause it difficult for the stakeholder to assess and monitor the foundation's performance due to the lack of transparency on its activities. So we have proposed some practical suggestions here. First is to increase the level of governance and accountability of reporting practices among the MPOs in Malaysia. The government may introduce a mandatory requirement for the reporting practices of the MPO. The second one, the government of Malaysia might need to set up one specific regulatory body or ministry to monitor the operations of all MPOs in Malaysia. A code of governance suitable for the MPO should also be developed to be considered to guide all MPOs in all the matters related to their governance, accountability, and reporting. There are limitations of the study, and we have also suggested some action to be taken for future research. So the study sample is very small because it only includes CLBG foundations, which their parents is listed on Bursa Malaysia. The study have to rely mainly on the information disclosed on the foundation's website due to most of the foundations have no separate annual reports. So we are suggesting for future research to consider to enlarge the samples criteria and extend the source of information from different sources such as interview with the officials or the radio data. Thank you so much for your listening, and should you have further question on our research, you may want to contact our corresponding author, Associate Professor Dr. Noziana Lokman. Thank you so much.